you call love, but deep down you are begging not to disappear. You say, I love you, but what you really want is to be seen. In the cave, two bodies joined in silence by the fire. Today, love became a scream in the middle of the void. You cling to, but not out of passion. For panic, they freeze inside and use the other as an emotional blanket. This is not love, it's fear. And no one survives the inner cold by pretending to be on fire. There is an echo that resonates in the depths of the modern soul, a scream that disguises themselves as a passionate whisper. It is the desperate sound of those who confuse love with the desperate need not to be forgotten. How many times in the last 24 hours have you heard or pronounced the words I love you and then felt a tightness in the chest that could not explain? This squeeze is not love. It is terror. Terror that if you do not say these words, if you do not hear them back, you will simply cease to exist in someone's world. Modern love has become an anxious performance, a constant validation show where each I love you works like a disguised question. Do you still see me? I'm still important to you? Please confirm that I exist. We live in an era where love has become a desperate antidote against invisibility, where each romantic statement carries the suffocating weight of the fear of being abandoned, ignored, forgotten. Think the last time you said I love you to someone. Remove for a moment all poetry, all romanticization, all the narrative you have built around that moment. What is left? What was the feeling that really moved these words? Was it the generous expansion of the heart that desires the good of the other? Or was it the distressing contraction of those who begging for attention, by confirmation, for an answer that calms the inner storm? The metaphor is cruel, but it needs. We are like prisoners in Plato's cave, but our version is even more perverse. We are not just seeing shadows on the wall, we are projecting our own shadows and calling them love. The fire that should warm and enlighten us has become a voracious flame that consumes our inner peace, our ability to be alone, our ability to love without demanding immediate return. Our ancestors knew a different type of fire. In primitive caves, fire was presence, protection, shared heat without anxiety. Two bodies approached him not because they feared the cold of loneliness, but because they recognized in the shared heat a natural extension of their own completeness. Love was a luxury, an extra, a celebration, not a desperate need for filling. Today our fire is different. It is an uncontrolled fire that needs to be constantly fed with confirmations, messages, calls, physical presence, repetitive statements. It is a fire that does not warm, burns. Do not illuminate, officer. Do not protect, consumes. And at the center of this fire, there is no peace. There is despair. The desperation of those who have found that they need the other not to celebrate life, but to confirm that it is still alive. Observe your own behavior in relationships. How many times have you checked your phone today waiting for a message from someone you love? How many times did you feel that twinge of anxiety when this person took a long time to answer? How many times has interpreted a silence as rejection? A delay such as disinterest, an absence as abandonment. This is not love, it is masked emotional dependence on romance. The modern I love you carries an urgency that true love is unaware of. It is always accompanied by an implicit expectation of immediate return, confirmation, reciprocity. It is an emotional investment that expects instant dividends. When we say I love you, we often want to say I need you to love me back so I can feel safe, valid, important. The difference is subtle but devastating. True love is a state of being, not a transaction. It is a bonfire that burns on its own, which does not need external fuel to stay on. It is the ability to be full even in the absence of the other, to wish the good of each other even when it does not benefit us directly, to love without screaming, without begging, without negotiating. But we lose this ability. We transform love into a drug, and like any addict, we need increasing doses to feel the same effect. We need more confirmations, more statements, more presence, more attention. And when we can't get our dose, we go into abstinence crisis, which we call jealousy, insecurity, intense love. The most disturbing thing is that this epidemic of transvestite needy of love is being romanticized. Movies, songs, books, social networks all celebrate obsession as passion, dependence as dedication, anxiety as intensity. We create a culture where sickly love is considered more authentic, deeper, more real than healthy love. The question that echoes is devastating and necessary. When you say I love you, what are you really trying to avoid? What emptiness are you trying to fill? What fear are you trying to calm down? Because until you can answer this question with brutal honesty, you will continue to confuse love with anxiety, turning each relationship into a desperate attempt to escape from yourself, losing the opportunity to find out what it is to truly love, without screaming, without begging, without negotiating. There is a lie so well told that the whole society believes in it. the idea that emotional dependence is synonymous with deep love. We were systematically conditioned to confuse attachment with affection, need with passion, codependency with commitment. And in this conditioning process, we completely lose the ability to distinguish between loving someone and need someone to feel complete. Anxious attachment has become the romantic norm of our era. That feeling of emptiness that sets in when the loved one does not respond immediately. That compulsive need to know where she is and with whom she is. That paralyzing fear that she can find someone better. All this was romanticized as signs of true love. The more you suffer, the more you love. The more you depend, the more you care. The more you despair, the more you are in love. A primitive observer would look at our modern relationships with a mixture of perplexity and pity. In my day, I would say with the raw wisdom of those who knew life in its most essential form, two bodies came together by choice, not lacking. The union happened because both were integers, not because they were desperate halves seeking completeness. There was no pathology of love that turned the choice into compulsion. The psychology of anxious attachment reveals a brutal truth about our emotional condition. We do not love, we stick. We do not choose, we despair. We do not deliver our heart. We negotiate our inner peace in exchange for crumbs of attention. The pattern is always the same. A voracious need for constant confirmation, a hypervigilance regarding signs of rejection, an inability to feel safe in the relationship. Note how anxious attachment disguised as romantic love works. The passionate person interprets each delay to respond to a message as a sign of disinterest. Each conversation with other people is seen as a potential betrayal. Every moment of partner independence is perceived as a threat to the relationship. Each silence is filled with catastrophic fantasies of abandonment. This is not love. It is the archetype of the orphan in action, the inner wounded and abandoned orphan, which desperately seeks a figure that fills the void left by inadequate care in childhood. This orphan does not want love. He wants a parental substitute who constantly reassures him, who repeatedly provides that he won't abandon him, that makes him feel safe in the world. The difference between love and attachment is fundamental, but our culture has done everything to erase it. True love is expansive. It makes you want your loved one to be the best version of yourself, even if it means that they can grow beyond you. The attachment is restrictive, wants to keep the person in a controllable, predictable box, always available to their emotional needs. In true love, you celebrate the independence of the other because you recognize that one free person chooses to be with you for pleasure, not out of necessity. In attachment, you fear the independence of the other because your self-esteem depends on the dependence of others. You need to be necessary to feel valuable. The person with anxious attachment lives in a constant state of emotional alertness. Each interaction is analyzed in search of signs of rejection. Each word is heavy, each tone of voice is interpreted, each facial expression is decoded. It is a state of hypervigilance that transforms love into work, the battlefield relationship, the partner in a source of constant anxiety. In my day, the primitive observer would continue. Love did not hurt, not because it was superficial, but because it was true. When someone left, there was sadness, but not despair. There was longing, but not existential empty, because each was responsible for his own inner fire. The other just shared the heat, not obliged to supply it. Anxious attachment creates relationships that act as mutual dependence contracts. I take care of your emotional lack, you take care of mine. I fill your emptiness, you fill mine. I am your source of validation, you are mine. It is a trade exchange disguised as a romance, where both partners become hostage to each other. The anxious person in the relationship develops a series of behaviors that they believe are demonstrations of love, but are actually desperate attempts to ensure emotional security. It becomes excessively available, sacrifices your own needs constantly, accepts situations that hurt it not to lose your partner. She confuses assurance with love, submission with dedication. The most tragic is that these behaviors, born of anxious attachment, often produce exactly the result that the person fears most: the partner's removal. Desperate energy, the constant need for reassurance, the lack of emotional independence. All can be suffocating to those on the other side of the relationship. But our society romanticizes this unhealthy dynamic. Movies portray stalking as a romantic persistence. Songs celebrate obsession as proof of true love. Books transform codependency into a romantic ideal. We create a culture where sickly love is considered more authentic than healthy love, where the inability to live without each other is seen as proof of absolute devotion. In the center of each modern relationship, there is an emotional black hole that no one wants to admit that exists. It is such a deep, so terrifying void that we prefer to fill it with anything: superficial relationships, constant validation, emotional drama, than facing it directly. And we call this desperate escape of love, this emotional anesthesia of romance, this pathological avoidance of passion. The internal conflict that defines our era is brutal in its simplicity. We have a voracious desire to be loved, but a paralyzing terror of being forgotten. And in this tension between desire and fear, we completely lose the ability to love genuinely. Because you cannot truly love when you are desperate to be loved. You cannot give when you are begging to receive. Note your own behavior in the last 24 hours. How many times have you checked your cell phone waiting for a message to calm your inner anxiety? How many times have you updated your social networks looking for likes, comments, any sign that you matter to someone? How many times have you started a conversation, not because you had something important to say, but because you couldn't stand the silence of your own inner world? This is the addiction of the digital age, the dependence on external validation to fill an inner void that should never have existed. Each notification acts as a dose of drugs, each like as a self-esteem injection, each response as a temporary confirmation that you are not alone in the universe. But like any drugs, the effect goes by quickly and you need a new dose, and another, and another. Modern relationships have become extensions of this addictive dynamics. We do not look for partners. We are looking for emotional dealers that can provide us with a constant dose of validation, attention, confirmation. And when we find someone willing to feed our addiction, we call it true love. When someone refuses to be our emotional supplier, we say that don't really love us. The person who lives in this state of emotional dependence develops a frightening skill to turn any interaction into an opportunity for validation. A casual conversation becomes a search for approval. Comfortable silence becomes a source of anxiety. Why isn't he talking to me? A moment of partner independence becomes an existential crisis. Doesn't he need me anymore? But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this dynamic is how it transforms genuine relationships into emotional transactions. You are not interested in the person. You are interested in what they can do in your inner void. You don't want to truly know her. She wants her to confirm her own importance. You don't want to love her. You want her to heal her loneliness. Our ancestors had a completely different relationship with loneliness. For them, being alone was not a sentence. It was a sacred stage of self-knowledge. It was the moment when you found your own inner bonfire. You learned to be your own company, developing the ability to be well with yourself. Only after mastering the art of being just that, you were ready to share your life with someone. You have transformed loneliness into illness, a primitive observer would say. In my day, a person who could not be alone was considered weak, incomplete, not ready for adulthood. Why can you give someone love if you don't have enough self-love to support your own company? The emptiness that disguises it on love creates people who are constantly looking for something or someone to fill the inner hole. They jump from relationship to relationship, not because they are passionate, but because they can't stand the confrontation with themselves. Each new novel is a new opportunity to avoid the inner work they really need to do. And when they are in a relationship, these people develop a compulsive need for emotional fusion. They want to know everything about their partner, control all their movements, be included in all their thoughts. Not because they love, because they are afraid. Fear that if they are not constantly present in the other's life, they can be forgotten, replaced, discarded. This need for fusion creates a suffocating dynamic where individual limits disappear. Your problems are my problems. Your happiness is my responsibility. Your mood defines my day. It is a form of codependency that destroys the individuality of both partners and transforms the relationship into an emotional prison where no one can breathe freely, grow independently, or simply be who it really is. We have come to confront the most brutal and liberating truth about modern love. Most people don't really want to love. They want to be seen, validated, confirmed, remembered. Does not seek genuine connection. Seeks an audience for its own existence. It does not seek intimacy, looking for a mirror that reflects a more interesting version of itself. This is the truth that no one wants to hear, but explains why so many modern relationships are superficial, dramatic, and unsatisfactory. We are not loving. We are using other people as a medicine for our own irrelevance. Each I love you is actually a please see me. Each romantic gesture is a desperate attempt to stand out in the world, to prove that we exist, to avoid confrontation with our own inner silence. The modern ego has transformed love into an extension of itself. We don't love the person. We love the feeling of being important to someone. We do not care about each other's welfare. We care about our own relevance in the lives of others. We don't want to make the other happy. We want to be the reason for the happiness of others because it makes us feel special, unique, irreplaceable. Observe honestly your own relationships. When you do something for love, what is the real motivation? Is it the genuine desire to benefit the other person, Or is it the need to be recognized as someone loving, dedicated, special? When you sacrifice yourself for the other, you are really thinking about his well-being, or are calculating how this sacrifice will be perceived, valued, remembered. The person who seeks modern love is constantly performing. Each interaction is an opportunity to show how interesting, funny, loving, or unique it is. Each conversation is a presentation where she is simultaneously actor and director, trying to create a specific impression, trying to be seen in a particular way. There is no spontaneity. There is strategy. There is no authenticity. There is personal marketing. You don't play for wanting connection but for fear of disappearing, a primitive observer with brutal clarity would say. They do not talk about having something important to say, but for not supporting that they forget about you. They do not love generosity, but for vanity. They transformed love into a form of self-promotion. The truth is that most modern relationships act as sophisticated emotional transactions. I pay attention to you, you make me feel important. I take care of you, you make me feel necessary. I listen to you, you make me feel valuable. I love you, you confirm that I am worthy of love. Each gesture has an implicit price. Each affection has an expectation of return. Each demonstration of affection is an investment expecting dividends. The person who does not want love but wants to be seen develops a frightening skill to turn any situation into an opportunity to draw attention. A discussion becomes a drama where it may be the misunderstood victim. A partner's problem becomes an opportunity to be the dedicated savior. An achievement of others becomes a chance to be the indispensable supporter. This dynamic creates relationships that are essentially narcissistic, even when they seem altruistic on the surface. The person who is constantly doing everything for each other is actually doing everything for himself, for the feeling of being important, necessary, admired. Your love is not a river that flows naturally. It is a carefully orchestrated performance for a specific audience. The most disturbing is how this dynamic disguises themselves as virtue. The person who cannot leave his partner alone is seen as dedicated. The person who is constantly sacrificing is admired as loving. The person who has no life of his own is praised as committed. Our society romanticized codependency and called it true love. But the hardest truth is that this desperate search for being seen prevents exactly what one wants most, being genuinely loved. Because true love can only exist between two people who are authentic, and you cannot be authentic when it is constantly performing. You cannot truly be known when you are always presenting yourself strategically. The person who wants to be seen lives in a constant state of performance anxiety. She's always wondering, how am I being perceived? Am I being interesting enough? Am I being loved enough? Am I being remembered enough? This hypervigilance in relation to the image itself prevents any possibility of relaxation, spontaneity, real intimacy. The raw truth is that until you stop trying to be seen and start genuinely seeing each other, until you stop seeking validation and start offering real value, until you stop using love as a form of self-promotion and start loving as a form of authentic self-expression, you will continue alone even when accompanied. Because you cannot find real connection when you are obsessed with your own image reflected in the eyes of others. But there is a way out of this emotional prison that we build around love. There is a way of loving that does not scream, does not beg, does not negotiate. There is a way to truly connect without depending, to surrender completely without getting lost, of loving deeply without becoming hostage. It is love in silence, not because it is secret, but because it is so complete in itself that it does not need external validation to exist. Imagine a fire in the primitive cave. It does not burn to impress anyone, does not shine to be praised, does not warm to receive gratitude. It is simply complete, self-sufficient, generous by nature. Your heat does not decrease when someone moves away. Your light does not hesitate when someone does not notice it. It has an incandescent center that is fed from the inside out, not from the outside in. This is the model of true love, an inner bonfire that burns for itself, which has its own fuel, its own reason for being. When you love it that way, you don't need the other to feed your flame. You offer it because it naturally overflows with your own completeness. It is not an investment expecting return. It is a gift without expectations. Learning to love in silence begins with the most lost capacity of the modern era, the ability to be alone without being needy. This means developing such a rich relationship that loneliness becomes a luxury, not a punishment. It means cultivating interests, passions, projects that do not depend on anyone's approval or participation. It means creating such a fascinating inner life that you genuinely like your own company. When you dominate the art of being alone, something magical happens. You stop projecting your needs in others. Stop expecting them to fill their emptiness, heal their loneliness, confirm their value. And when you stop using people as a medicine for your own wounds, you can finally see them as they really are, not as extensions of your needs, but as unique beings with your own journey, your own dreams, your own struggles. Love in silence cultivates real presence. When you are not desperate to be seen, you can really see. When you are not eager to be heard, you can genuinely listen. When you are not calculating what you will earn from an interaction, you may be fully present in it. This presence is one of the rarest gifts you can offer to someone. Your full attention, without schedule, without expectations. Emotional self-control becomes natural when you are no longer at the mercy of the reactions of others. When your inner peace does not depend on the mood of the other, when your self-esteem does not float based on the attention you receive, when your happiness is not conditional on the behavior of third parties, you develop emotional stability that is in itself attractive and reassuring. This stability allows you to love without screaming. You do not need to constantly declare your love because it naturally manifests yourself in your actions, your presence, your way of treating the person. You do not need to beg for love because you are not desperate for validation. You don't have to negotiate affection because you are not doing emotional transactions. You are offering a free gift. Solitude, the ability to be without lonely, becomes its most powerful ally. You learn to use time alone not to feed anxieties about relationships, but to connect with yourself, to develop your own interests, to cultivate your own inner wealth. When you find someone special, you have something genuine to share, not a void to fill. Our ancestors understood that true love is born of abundance, not scarcity. When you are full of life, passions, purpose, energy, you naturally overflow these qualities to the people around you. Not because you need something in return, but because it is your nature to give when you have a lot. Love in silence transforms the dynamics of relationships. Instead of two needy people trying to extract something from each other, you have two abundant people sharing your inner wealth. Instead of mutual dependence, you have healthy interdependence. Instead of anxious fusion, you have conscious intimacy. When you love it in silence, you celebrate the independence of the other because you recognize that someone who chooses to be with you freely offers a much more valuable gift than someone who is with you by need. You encourage the growth of the loved one, even if it means that they can evolve beyond you, because true love always wants the best for each other, regardless of personal cost. This form of love creates a beautiful paradox. The less you need love, the more love you get. The less you require attention, the more genuine attention you attract. The less you perform, the more people want to know who you really are. It is as if the universe conspired in favor of those who learn to be complete for themselves. The person who loves in silence develops a magnetic quality that is difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. It is the quality of someone who is genuinely well with himself, who needs nothing of you, but clearly values his presence. It is the security of being with someone who will not despair if you need space, who will not interpret your mood changes as signs of rejection, which will not turn each small question into an existential crisis. The end result is a complete transformation in the quality of your relationships. Instead of relationships based on mutual need, you create mutual choice-based relationships. Instead of love that consumes, you experience love that nourishes. Instead of passion that burns and leaves gray, you live passion that illuminates and warms. In the primitive cave, love didn't need to announce themselves because it was obvious in the way two people were. They looked at each other. They shared the space. There was no need for dramatic statements or grandiose gestures because love was present in every small interaction, in every affectionate look, in every shared comfortable silence. This is the love that our age has lost and needs to rediscover. The love that exists in silence between two people who truly know each other, who completely accepted themselves, who chose to walk together not for need, but out of abundance. It is a love that makes no noise because you don't have to prove anything to anyone, neither to the world nor for yourself. In the cave, love made no noise. He just shone, and that was enough. If it touched something inside, if you have already felt freezing inside while calling it love, so this channel is your shelter. Subscribe and leave your vision in the comments.